Okay, tonight I want to go back to this series that we started 2 weeks ago on what is a realistic understanding of what realistic recovery is. What is involved in recovery? And I have found over the years that a lot of people coming into recovery the first time have lots of unrealistic expectations of what recovery will be like. And they kind of have a fantasy that there's a silver bullet out there, a magic pill that you'll get fixed and you'll be all good and never struggle again. And so over the years, I have learned that the more realistic I can make people aware of what recovery involves, the better it is for them. They may not like being told what's included, but the more aware they are, the better. And so that's what I'm doing in this series, and I just hope it helps you. It's very basic, very practical. What I want to look at tonight is this. Is there anywhere out there that I can go and find out if I do this, this, and this, then I will be successful? Is there anything out there that if I do it, it will guarantee my success? The answer from my perspective is there's nothing out there that will guarantee your success that's honest and real. So guaranteeing success is not what I think the way to look at recovery. What I think is maybe a better way to look at recovery is what are the things that if I add them to my life will improve my chances of staying clean and sober? I had a boss about 10 years ago who was doing his master's in psychology, and he had 30 years clean, and he chose to do his master's on the things that we look for that help us know whether a person will be successful or not. And I thought that was a great thing. So he used to sit with the counselors at Tamarack, and he says, what do you look for? And I go, well, we sense things. Well, what do you sense in people? What is it that you're looking for that makes you feel a bit hopeful that this person stands a chance to do well in recovery? And that was a good exercise for me because it got me thinking about what is it I look for? Because I can have a person come in to react, and within the first couple hours of talking with them, I have a very good picture in my head of how successful I think they're going to be based on their understanding of recovery at that moment in time, and based on their openness to look at other aspects that they might need to consider in recovery. So that's what I want to give you tonight. What are the things that increases your probability of success? Now, we don't just do that in recovery. If you think about it, we do it in all aspects of life. So, if you wear a helmet when you ride your bike, there's a greater probability that you won't have a head injury. We kind of go with that. If you don't text while you're driving, there's a greater probability that you won't get in an accident. Now, if you're a good addict, you think you're the exception to every rule. And so you think, well, I've been texting while I've been driving and I've never got in an accident, so see, I'm good. But yet we know if you keep texting, the probability of you getting in an accident goes up. So we think that way. And then we teach our children that if they're respectful to others, there's a better chance that people will be respectful to them. There's certain things you do in relating to other people that increase your chances of having good relationships in your life. And then we teach them that, or we teach ourselves that if we're a healthy role model, if we are working on ourselves, there's a greater probability our kids will turn out okay. So all of those things, we constantly are looking for what increases my chances of success. So let me take you to the world of addiction. And let me get you to look at some of the facts, and AFM has put these facts out about 5 years ago, If you come in to recovery and you say, I quit, and I'm not going to any meetings, nothing like that, I just decided I'm going to quit, your chances of being successful at quitting are 3%. So that simply means there's some people so stubborn that they can quit and they'll never pick up again. They're going to be miserable to live with, but they're not going to use again because they're stubborn. But 3% is not a great percentage. So let's say you went to a 28-day program like AFM, and you only went to that program and you said, that's all I need. I don't need any other supports or meetings. You would stand about a 5 to 10%, closer to the 5, of staying clean and sober. That's the success rate if you just go for a 28-day program. If you went to AFM and then you got plugged into a 12-step group or Finding Freedom or a church group, your chances of success would go up to 10 to 15%. So every little thing, what I want you to see, is improving your chances of success. If you went to a program like a Tamarack, where they begin to introduce you to underlying issues, your chances would go up to about 20%. If you came to a React and you really worked on all that trauma with an open heart and you did the hard work necessary, your chances of success will go over 50%. So all of that is now research. The government requires stats in order to figure that out. But what I want you to see is we know that if you do certain things, it will improve your chances of success. If you don't do those things, your chances remain small. So what then is required beyond those things that I just mentioned that I have learned over the years if a person is going to make it in recovery? So I'm going to give you over 20 things that if you really want to have a great chance of success, you're going to need to look at all of these. I think there's 23 different things that I'm going to talk about. You're going to need to look at those things and begin to change or grow in those areas. So number one, we know if you return to the old friends, your chances of success go way down. If you say, I'll go back to the old lifestyle, I just won't use, we know most people aren't successful. They will be using sooner or later. So old friends, old lifestyle, that's got to change. Now just that change in and of itself is huge. And it is difficult. It requires boundaries. It requires tough decisions. And many are not prepared to do that. But we know that is one of the big determiners of success. Gabor Mate from Vancouver, he cites research done within a couple places in British Columbia where they track clients after they finished a program who went back to old friends and toxic family and 0% stayed clean. That's how significant that is. So boundaries is big. Now, it's not just cutting people out of your life, though that might be necessary, but it is also setting boundaries up where you don't let them run all over you. You learn to say no. You learn to be treated with respect. And if they are not going to treat you with respect, then you're going to leave or hang up the phone. You're going to begin to make boundary decisions. So important. So you can think of just Christmas. Some of you are still so vulnerable that if you were to go to your family's place and they brought out alcohol, you'd relapse. And so you have to say, I have to have a boundary right now where I can't be around alcohol. That's your only way of surviving. And so if that means saying, no, I can't come if there's alcohol, then your sobriety depends on that. That's a tough boundary. But that is part of recovery. What then comes out of all of that is you need to start building a healthy support system. If your old support system is toxic and unhealthy, you can't do recovery alone. You have to start creating healthy supports. That can be a counselor, that can be a group, that can be some new friends in recovery. All of those things, a surrogate family isn't part of that. We know that people who get a sponsor or a mentor have a better chance of success because now they are getting somebody who's walked the same journey, has learned the lessons, and can pass them on and prepare them and help them through the tough spots. That is a very important thing. And then people don't just need a support system, they need recovery-related meetings. They need to keep learning. They need to keep going to places that remind them of stuff they've learned in the past, that keep giving them new insights and greater self-awareness. That becomes an important thing. And then most people, they need to learn to connect with themselves, with a higher power, with their emotions, with their thinking on a daily basis. If they start disconnecting and losing touch of what they're feeling, they get into a bad place very quickly. If they're not feeling spiritually fit, they're not in a good place either. So people need to learn a daily routine that includes some way of connecting with themselves and with their higher power. And that can be prayer, meditation, journaling, whatever works for them, but they need to find that. I ask clients all the time, if you start stuffing your emotions and disconnecting from how you're feeling, how long will you stay clean and sober? Most say within a day or two, I will be in a very bad headspace. That's how treacherous it can be in the very beginning. And so there has to be some system that you develop to connect. And if you do, that increases self-awareness, and that increases your chances of staying clean and sober. And then, I had to add this one, we've talked about it. If you get into a romantic relationship too quickly, your chances of success just went way down. And we know that. But you'll still go out and do it anyways. Okay. The next thing, if you walk around with resentments that you've never dealt with, your chances of success go way down. And in that resentment list, probably the greatest resentment that will mess up your chances of success is a resentment towards yourself. If you're walking around full of guilt, beating yourself up, putting yourself down, you are lowering your chances of success. So, forgiving yourself, learning healthy forgiveness of others who have hurt you becomes an important part of recovery if you want to succeed. And then, dealing with losses that you've never dealt with. We just had the week on grief this week at React, and most of the clients admitted, and they all do every time we do this week at React, is they've got many, many hundreds of losses that they've never dealt with. They just stuff them, hope that they wouldn't bother them, but they know that they're there. And so part of dealing with recovery, part of healing, is beginning to get those losses dealt with. Next one, dealing with all your trauma stuff. You still will get triggered. And probably the greatest thing that leads to relapse is when your trauma gets triggered. Because when your trauma gets triggered, you go from 0 to 1,000 in a nanosecond. And then you make these impulsive, rash decisions in that very escalated emotional place. And you're in big trouble. So if you don't deal with the trauma, you're going to keep getting triggered. So dealing with the trauma becomes very important. Now let me just stop and say this. A lot of you are going to say a couple of things here. Number one, this is too much work, I'm out of here. You got to start somewhere, and you don't have to do it all together at the same time. And I'm just trying to lay out a map, okay? But secondly, what I want you to see is that if you've started this journey already, that you're saying, yeah, that's helped me. Yeah, I have a bit more hope because I've been dealing with that stuff. So yeah, this is an important piece. I've learned it through experience. You can pass that on to others who are feeling hopeless and that it's way too much, it's impossible. The next thing, you got to begin to change the way you think and look at life. So trauma had you in a place where you were constantly looking for danger and you became negative and critical. And you said, if I can find a problem, then I won't get hurt. So you just become a negative person. But you know that whenever you get into that negative headspace, it's downhill. And it leads to a dark place and often to a relapse. So learning to see life more accurately, dealing with all that negative thinking is so important. But again, all of this is difficult stuff. It is changing your whole way of living. And that is what recovery is. Next one. Remaining a victim. If you remain a victim, your chances go to about 0. So here's the challenge with that. When you were growing up in recovery, you were a victim. You were mistreated, abused, lots of crap happened to you, and nobody validated it. And there's no way to resolve it. You were too little. And you got punished if you tried to resolve it. And so you just tried to act tough and not like nothing bothered you. But what happens for a lot of people in recovery is they think the way to validate that they are a victim or they were a victim is to still act like a victim. And they act, I can't do it, it's too hard, will you do it for me? And they're hoping if they just say, I'm too helpless, that others would do their recovery for them. It won't work. So a big part of recovery is saying, I got to grow up. I got to take responsibility for my own decisions. This is going to be hard. This is going to be daunting, overwhelming at times, but I'm determined to learn the tools and apply them. And I'm determined to do what it takes. And that's how you get past the victim. One of the early signs that you're sliding into that is you're either feeling sorry for yourself or you're blaming somebody for your problems. That is sliding into victim. Next thing is if you develop or have an entitlement mindset. You owe me my recovery. I've had it so rough, you owe me doing it for me. That entitlement, sadly, is becoming more common for people coming into recovery. Lots of kids who are spoiled come into recovery feeling entitled that everybody do it for them. You got to get past that. Next one, and this is a big one, you got to deal with that low self-image, that shame, and come to accept yourself. That is probably one of the deepest, most core issues for people coming out of addiction into recovery. And it comes from the trauma part, where I feel the reason that I was neglected or abused or abandoned because I must not be worth anything. It's my fault. And you operate out of that, saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. That, if it doesn't begin to heal, your chances of success go way down. And that is a huge, big thing. Other things that you did to survive was you lied in order to protect yourself. You wore masks in order to protect yourself, in order to get people to like you, all of that. Recovery, if you want to be successful, is starting to give up those old behaviors. starting to change the things you used to do that kept you safe but don't work anymore. So if you continue to lie and wear masks, you'll never have a healthy, intimate relationship. You'll never be healthy. So you're dealing with the old coping tools and changing them. And that's a big job. I've just mentioned a couple. Most people find they have to find a spiritual component in their life. They can't do it unless they do. I've had a couple people over my last 15 years who've come to me and they said, we're atheists. And after a while, they come back to me and they say, we don't believe in God, but we believe there's a spiritual part of life that we need to look at. And that's a conscience. That's having values. That's having a belief system about what healthy is. So that's part of recovery. Then building healthy friendships is part of recovery. That's where you're going to begin dealing with some of your issues. That's where you're going to begin to learn new coping skills. So you're going to learn to be honest, to be open. You're going to take little risks and trust. And that's going to help you heal and grow and change. So those relationships become very important. Now, you can't rush into that. It's a gradual thing. But what we know is the more healthy friends you have, the greater your chances of success. Next, healthy coping tools. So I've given you some of the bad ones that you got to get rid of. Next, you got to get some healthy tools. So you get rid of the old toolbox with all the unhealthy tools and start getting new ones. So the number one tool is learning to ground yourself when you get escalated. So when you go from 0 to 100, bring her back down. That becomes important. Second, stress, hurt, problems. Some of the greatest triggers that send people back into fight-flight. So developing tools to handle problems, which means getting rid of procrastination, getting rid of saying if I don't think about it, maybe it'll disappear. If I stick my head in the sand, maybe it'll fix itself. All of those things got to go. You have to learn how to deal with problems. And then dealing with your emotions, letting yourself feel, letting yourself understand your emotional world, and learning how to manage it. So important. And then the old tools I talked about, manipulation, control. Let me give you this. We talk about relapse as an event, but it's also a process that led to that event. And in that process, before you pick up, old behaviors start reappearing. So you go back into addictive behavior before you go into addictive practice. Those old behaviors are your old coping skills. So those are the things that are early warning signs that you're not in a good place, that you're going downhill. So part of what is important in recovery is identifying your warning signs when you slide into those old behaviors so that you can stop and change and turn it around. Because what you realize, if you keep doing those things, you're going to pick up sooner or later. You're going to cross a line of no return. So begin to know that. Next thing, in your head, believe it or not, are thousands of lies that at one time you thought were the truth. So if you were to spill your glass of milk, all of a sudden these tapes would start playing that you're a loser, you can't do anything right, nobody's ever going to want you, and you're going to beat yourself up. All kinds of lies are there. Recovery means finding out what those lies are and replacing them with the truth. And that's a journey. Because as long as you keep believing lies, your chances of success go way down. The more truth you believe, the greater your chances of success. We've talked about finding a moral compass. So you begin to find out what's right and wrong, what's loving, what's not loving, and living that stuff. And that's a shift in the very core of who you are. Addiction, it was all self-centeredness, all about me, all about what I want. Recovery, healthy, is I got to change that. I still matter, but I'm not better than everybody. I'm not more important than everybody. I have to figure that out. And then the last one I'm going to put on this list is dealing with mental health issues. Everybody in recovery has some anxiety and depression issues. Some have it severely. It's a very debilitating thing. If they're going to increase their probability of success, they have to get that stabilized. They got to get that managed. And that is very difficult. So those are the different categories of what makes up recovery. Now I want to come at it from a little different angle. What I've described for you is you got to get rid of stuff and let go of some stuff, and then you got to replace it. So recovery is about letting go and replacing. It's very easy, I think, in recovery when you're brand new, is it sounds like all you have to do is let go of this, let go of that, get rid of this, get rid of that. And it just sounds like, man, is anything good? I just got to get rid of everything. And so the balance is, yeah, you got to get rid of a whole bunch of stuff, but if you don't replace it, just getting rid of it is not good enough. You won't stay clean and sober just by getting rid of it. You stay clean and sober by getting rid of it and then replacing it with healthy stuff. And that's what is so important to understand. So, for the Christian part, we've been doing a little bit with this, what's healthy recovery, realistic recovery look like, to a Bible parallel to a guy called Nehemiah in the Bible. And Nehemiah was a guy that saw the city of Jerusalem. This is back 2,500 years ago. But it was in rubble. The city was demolished. The walls were demolished. And so nobody could live there safely because they had enemies that would come in and attack. And so his goal, his desire was, I want to rebuild the walls from the rubble. Because if we can get walls, then we can get safety. And so what my thoughts were, in recovery, what you're basically saying is my life is in rubble. How do I rebuild my life from rubble? And Nehemiah gives us some of the very practical things that Nehemiah had to do and the problems that he faced that, in my mind, perfectly parallel what recovery is all about. So we've been developing some of that, and I want to give you a little bit tonight. So there's 3 things that are going to be covered tonight that you all will relate to, and that's 3 different things you're going to face in recovery. So number 1, you're going to have some people in your life who aren't happy about your recovery. I'm sure your dealer's not really happy about your recovery. Your family may not be happy about your recovery and wish you were the way you used to be. Some of your friends don't like the new you. And so you can get persecution, you can get comments, shots. That becomes a difficult part of recovery. Secondly, people realize that when they start to change, that growth is very fragile in the beginning. So let's say you've been working on your self-image, your low self-esteem, your shame issues, and you're actually starting to like yourself a little bit. And you're feeling a little more comfortable in your own skin. And then you go to Mom's for Christmas, and she raises that eyebrow the way she does when she's judging you. And all of a sudden, all your shame comes back. And it's almost like you didn't grow. And you go, I just feel terrible about myself again. I hate myself. So you see that growth in dealing with your shame, it was real growth, but it was fragile growth. And so you're still very vulnerable to regress. If the right negative things happen, they will do that. And then what many people find is early recovery is like walking through a minefield. One misstep and kaboom, you blow up. And there's lots of mines in that minefield. And so if you just take the list we did in the first half, those 20-some things, I got to watch out for friends now, blah, blah, blah. That's one thing after another where I'm really vulnerable. And so you go into recovery realizing how vulnerable you are. So what we're going to see with Nehemiah is all of that was happening. And so recovery and rebuilding for him, it meant factoring in the vulnerable areas with extra protection and constantly making little adjustments as new things came to his understanding. As he became aware of situations, he'd make an adjustment. So let me give you a bit of what's going on at this part in the story. We've come now to about half of the wall is done. So they're making a lot of progress. So good things are happening. The wall is kind of up to the right height in some areas. So they got some safety, some strength coming back. But there's still gaps in the wall. There's still areas that haven't been done where they're still vulnerable. And that's what you're going to find in recovery. As you rebuild your life, you're going to get stronger in certain areas and you're going to be excited about that, and you should be. Because changes are happening. You're rebuilding in a positive way, but there'll still be some gaps in the wall. There'll still be some weak areas. And those are going to need special attention. The second thing that was happening at that time is the closer the walls got to being finished, the more unhappy the enemies got. Because once the wall was totally finished, they were going to lose their chance to conquer those people again. So the wall was a threat to their power. The wall being built was a threat to them doing things the way they wanted to do them. And that's what's going to happen. The healthier you get, often the more opposition you're going to get. They can be excited about the early growth in you, and they can be cheering you on and say, great, you're changing, you're building your wall from the rubble, fantastic. And then all of a sudden they go, you think you're better than us now? And all of it changes. So the stronger you get, guess what happens? You show your family where they're unhealthy. You show friends that you can't hang around with them because they're too messed up and they don't like you pointing out that they're messed up. So the healthier you get, the more you mirror back to people in your life their unhealthiness. And they start reacting negatively to the growth in you. And you get opposition. So then two things come out of that. The first is the enemy starts threatening to attack. And so fear begins to happen. So let me just read it to you. It says, the Jews who lived near the enemy came and told us again and again, they will come from all directions and attack us. Now this person, I think, that went and told everybody, I think they thought they were being helpful. But they are spreading panic. And many of you will get somebody who's triggered, and instead of de-escalating themselves, they go out and create chaos. They go out and phone and talk to everybody they meet and just spread their panic. And so fear was spreading. And all the people are hearing what other people are saying and going, oh, we're in trouble. Oh, bad things are going to happen. And they're getting obsessed with the dangers. They're losing sight of the progress, and they're focusing on the dangers in a negative way. And that happens to many people in recovery. Fear, when it starts sneaking back in, will take you to dark places. The second thing was happening, and many of you will relate to this. They were getting discouraged. So it says this, then the people of Judah began to complain. The workers are getting tired. There's so much rubble to be moved. We will never be able to build the wall by ourselves. I hear this on a regular basis. Tim, this is too hard. I've been working for 3 months. I thought I'd be fixed by now. And I got so much more work to do. I'm getting discouraged. Or I was making progress, I got triggered, and then I went back into old behaviors. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That is so frustrating and discouraging. I think everybody in recovery goes through discouragement at one time or another. Sometimes for long stretches, because recovery is hard. Recovery is building from the rubble, and there's a lot of bricks to pick up and restack. It takes a lot of work. There's a lot of setbacks. You get tired, you get all these other stresses. It's very easy to get discouraged. That can take all your motivation away. That can set you up for a relapse. So if you get discouraged, reach out for help. It is so important. So those are the 2 things. Fear and discouragement are going on. And those are common issues in recovery. So I want you to see what Nehemiah did. It's actually kind of genius to realize he made a whole bunch of different adjustments. But as you look at the different adjustments that he made, there is a brilliance to it and a wisdom that can be applied in your recovery. So there are going to be some things that were huge changes, big adjustments, and there are other things that were little things. So let me give you this. I tell clients all the time that recovery, the first part of recovery is self-awareness. The more you understand your triggers, the more you understand your patterns when you are triggered, what happens in your thinking, what happens in your emotions, what happens in your actions, the more you're able to stop it and realize what needs to change. Problem with self-awareness is the greater self-awareness you get, the more you realize how vulnerable you are in so many different ways. And so that's what's happening to these people, is they are becoming aware of their vulnerabilities. So Nehemiah starts responding. So number 1, I placed armed guards behind the lowest parts of the wall in exposed areas. I stationed the people to stand guard by families, armed with swords and bows. He says, people are working on the wall. They need help right now. I got to bring in some strong people to stand guard for them, to help protect them. They're not able to provide enough all by themselves. So Nehemiah understood, at time you got to bring in the professionals. At time you got to bring in people who are stronger than you, who can fill a gap in your life and help protect you for a while. Now you still got to do your part, but there will be times you're going to have to call in some strong people. And Nehemiah understood that. And then with that was this increased vigilance. We are in danger in these areas especially. So I need people who are watching. I need people who are alert to any attacks from the enemy. And so there are times in recovery you need a heightened vigilance because of the weaknesses you're feeling at that moment in time. So vigilance becomes super important. Second thing, it says this, from then on, only half of my men. Now he's talking about, so Nehemiah, we saw in the beginning, he was second to the king of Persia or modern Iran. So he had a whole bunch of people that served him. He had soldiers that protected him. He had bodyguards all around him. So what he is saying here is, I got to take some of my help, some of my people, and give them a new job. So I can do without my jacuzzi bath tonight. I can do without kind of my lobster dinner on a platter. I got to take those people and reassign them because there's a bigger need. So what you're going to need at times is the people in your life who are in authority positions or places of strength who are willing to make some sacrifices to help you. You just don't survive without those kind of people. People that are willing to stop what they're doing and give some time and attention to where you need it. And Nehemiah understood that, and he was willing to make those sacrifices. But again, what I want you to understand is this. From those first two things that Nehemiah did, it makes very clear there's times in recovery we need help. We can't do it alone. If we try, we will fail. We need to be okay with getting supports and help at those times. Third thing he did. The leaders, so now it's the leaders of the country, the politicians, the mayor, all of those political people, they stationed themselves behind the people of Judah who are building the wall. And what he's saying is this, they left their responsibilities to be cheerleaders, to say, let's help you. And so again, people in positions of authority who are saying, these people need a lot of encouragement right now. We want to get behind them. We can't do the work for them, but we sure can encourage them, and we can help them and be a cheerleader for them. You're going to need those kind of people who give all that extra encouragement. I don't know how many of you have gone through a time where you were discouraged and you just you're dragging, debating, giving up, and then one person just said the right thing and they got you. And they said the right thing, and all of a sudden your whole spirit lifted and you are ready to go again. That's what these guys were doing. We need cheerleaders in our life. Next one. The laborers carried on their work with one hand supporting their load and one hand a weapon. So now they're putting bricks on with their right hand. They got their sword in their left hand. So they're realizing we have to be prepared all the time. And then it says the builders had a sword belted to their side, and a trumpeter stayed with me to sound the alarm. A couple things that I want you to see there. They had to change how they normally did things. They had to change their daily routine. They had to change what they did in their day and how they did it. So you might have a nice little schedule and routine all built up, and then you go back to work. Then you got to make some changes. Or you get your kids back. You got to make some changes. So what you realize in recovery is as things happen and come up, be prepared to change your routine. Now, you're not getting rid of stuff that is really important. You're still figuring out a way to get your priorities done and to stay safe but get stuff accomplished. So, flexibility. Not laziness, but adapting in order to meet the needs that you're going through. So important. And then, number 5, I explained to the nobles, officials, all the people, the work is spread out. So it's a big city, a big wall. They're over a mile apart. The work is spread out. We're widely separated from each other along the wall. When you hear the blast of the trumpet, rush to wherever it is sounding, then our God will fight for us. Nehemiah realized this. We need a system to communicate when we're in trouble. We need a way to send out the warnings, the message, so everybody hears it. That's part of recovery. You have to set up a communication network, A way of, who am I going to call if I'm struggling? How do I sound the alarm? Because if I don't have that, and I'm stuck over here all by myself, I'm going to get defeated. So you need a communication system. And then the sixth one, I told everyone living outside the walls to stay in Jerusalem. So while they were building the walls, there were people still living out in the forest, in the fields, but they were in danger. So he says to those people, now that the walls are half done, come in and stay inside the walls as we have them. That way they and their servants could help guard duty at night and work during the day. So what he is saying is, we got to watch out for each other. And when we see somebody in danger, we can't make the danger go away totally, but we can maybe help by bringing them to a safer place, by getting them part of a network where they're going to be looked out for by other people, where people are going to be there for them if they need it. We need to be building a network that cares for each other and brings people in danger to safer places. Now, isn't that a genius, what Nehemiah did there? Here's what's important, I think, for you, everyone to understand. When you've lived disconnected and denying everything, I don't have any grief problems, I don't got any problems, you're not aware of how vulnerable you are. You still are, you're just denying it. So the first step, and Nehemiah is showing it, is we got to get honest with ourselves. And we have to begin to say, I need to look honestly at my weak areas. Maybe I got a weakness when it comes to sex or some other area, or food, or stress, or busyness, or saying no, or all kinds of different things. I need to look honestly at those areas and quit denying that it's a problem. Only when I get honest can I start saying, okay, what do I need? Now, most people in recovery say, what do I need to do all by myself? And what Nehemiah says, no, you can't do it by yourself. You got to do some stuff, but you got to factor in having people who care for you, a way of communicating with those people, a way of protecting each other. And then you need to make adjustments as things come up to your routine, to your life, so that as you become more aware, you grow with that awareness. And you become safer, stronger, and healthier. That's what recovery is. It's lots of practical little things. So it goes to your food. It goes to your sleep. Let me just say this about sleep. Do you realize that for most people, coming into recovery, they all of a sudden start getting up at 7 in the morning? In the problem, that's when you went to bed. But now you're getting up. You want to know what I look for as an early warning sign that a person's slipping? They start saying, you know what, this movie goes till 2 in the morning. I'm going to stay up and watch this movie. And then the next night, I wonder what else is on TV at 2 in the morning. And then they're up till 7 in the morning again. And you go, uh-oh, that's a little thing that seems so insignificant. But that your whole recovery can revolve on that one little thing. So it's the little wee changes that Nehemiah is helping us understand this keeping safe, growing, and rebuilding our life is about.